many of y'all are 20 years or older? How many of you are 25 years or older? How many of you are 30 years or older? Oh, good. How many of you are 35 years or older? Oh, we're getting, okay. How many of y'all are 40 years or older? We have a few, but very few. I want you to imagine that every day that you've been alive, every working day that you have been alive, that you've gotten up and gone to work and worked for the same company in the same industry. I've been doing that for 43 years. And I hope to do it for another decade. And you say, this guy needs life? No, I enjoy what I'm doing. And let me suggest to you 3 things that you need to consider as you go about your career and what you want to do. First, as I said, the first thing you want to do is you want to do something that you enjoy doing. When you do something that you enjoy doing, you won't work. It is just an extension of yourself. Second, work with people who have the same values that you have. People who have one of their highest values, integrity. And integrity is simply treating others the way you would want to be treated. Whether it is your customer, whether it's your shareholder, whether it's your peers or your subcontractors, it's treating others the way you want to be treated. And if that is the goal of the people that you work with, then it's possible to get up every day for 43 years and go to the same job. And third, work in an industry that is dynamic and impactful. Let me expand on these 3 a bit. First, enjoy what you're doing. Hopefully, after the number of years of schooling and university you've had, you kind of know where your strengths are. You know what interests you. And pursue what you're good at and what you think you can be successful at. If mathematics isn't your goal and objective, that's fine. Find out what you are good at and where you do fit in and where you can be successful. I was blessed as a kid to know what I wanted to do. I remember living in a subdivision, and as a little kid I would sit there and play in the sandbox with my little toys and I enjoyed it. And I watched them come in and dig a ditch and fill it with storm sewer. And then the utilities coming in. And then seeing the contractor lay a foundation and the homes going up. I knew I wanted to be part of the building process. When I turned 16, I went to work for a contractor. My tools were a pick and follow, a shovel and a pick. And I realized that I was successful at that, but that's not what I enjoyed doing. So I came on to Texas A&M to further my education to maybe get on the other side of that pick and follow. And there I found the program, Construction Science, and came here and got my degree. Now I knew I wanted to be a builder, and I wanted to create and be part of creating the built environment. The real question, and the question that hopefully you are grappling with, is how do I do that? Where do I fit in? How do I get into this great industry, the built environment? Second, as I said to you, you need to work with people who have the values you have. You're going to spend the majority of your time at your work, your daylight hours. And you need to be working with people where there's not this tension. Do I lie to this contractor, or do I shop this bid, or, can I talk ugly? to a laborer, because he's just a laborer and I am a college graduate. Think about that. You don't want to be in a situation where you are at tension with hopefully your conscience and your principles. Third, I say work in a dynamic industry. As I said, I work in the built environment industry. Now, what do I mean by the built environment industry? It's an industry where people shape the places where we live, work, and play. Where we live. This is Sugar Land. This is a subdivision. This is Museum Tower, a project, high-rise apartment under construction in Houston. This is one that has been completed right there by the Galleria in Houston. Apartment. This is MoMA, which is on top of the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. It's a John Nouvel designed condominium. The average price condominium goes for $4,500 a square foot. Top floors are closer to $7,000. You can get a deal at $3,000 a square foot on the lower floors. It is not in the city. It could be out in the Intercoastal Canal in San Augustine, Florida. It could be in downtown Houston trying to create a former industrial park into a residential park. It's where we work. That's the built environment. Whether it is Salesforce Tower in San Francisco, or whether it is 222 Berkeley in Boston, or maybe it's the medical place, where St. Luke's Hospital in Houston, or it may be a distribution warehouse. It could be retail establishment. You could own Five Guys franchise. It's where we play. This is a lovely golf course in River Valley. It's Petco Park, where the San Diego Padres play. It's where my wife plays at the Galleria, selling and buying. It could be just a lovely place to go have a picnic. Or it could be a great ski resort in Aspen Highlands. So, all of these are HINES projects. These projects, I guess I got a question for you. And that question is, why does something get built? Why do we build a road between here and Houston? Yes, sir.
Build something, either a need or a want.
Yeah, there's a need or a want. There is a need. And we'll get into the different needs that we have identified. But first, you need to understand a little bit about HINES and who we are. HINES is a privately owned, fully integrated global real estate firm. Privately owned, you understand what that means. It means it's not a stock company, it's a private, Mr. HINES, he owns it. It is fully integrated. What do I mean by that? Development management is one part of what we do. We build. We build for our own account. We also build for others. It's an investment management business. We acquire existing buildings. We manage them, and then we will sell them. We are also a property management company. That means once the project is built, or once we buy it, we take it over, we operate it, and manage it. When I say we are a global firm, we are in 5 different regions in the United States, and with our central location here in Houston, we are an international firm. We are in 19 different countries, going from Melbourne, Australia, up to Calgary. We are in Brazil, and we are in China. So we truly are a global company. We are in 115 different U.S. cities, and 84 cities and 18 countries outside the United States. The one country where we're in Luxembourg, and we don't have anything built there, but we're there in Luxembourg for tax reasons. So that's another story. That's the 19th country we're in. There are over 160 million square feet of real estate that we have developed. There's 104 projects right now that we have either in design or in planning. We've raised almost 50 strategic funds. We have raised $26 billion for those investment vehicles, and right now we have $87 billion of assets under management. So that's a little bit about who we are. And what I want to focus on is the development management side of our business, because I think that's most relevant to what you're thinking you would and how you would like to approach the built environment industry. We mentioned the different type of products. You saw every product I showed you. It wasn't just office buildings, even though that's what we're known for. We have built a number of products. What does that have to do with buildings? It's the built environment that we're a part of. We'll talk more on that. And we asked the question, and it was rightfully answered. Why does something get built? It's a need. Somebody perceives there is a need. It's in the response to that need that the wheels start turning. Define the need. Where, what, how big. You've got to try to understand the economics of it. Does it make sense? And then you bring the resources together to meet that need. That is basically what a developer does. That's our role in the built environment. Now, we've established the fact that there is a need, and that need has been identified, and it's usually the developer. Now, the developer could be the state of Texas saying we need a road between here and Houston. The developer could be the hospital system saying, I need to build a hospital. So don't just, think broadly when you think about the built environment and what a developer is and what he does. It's primarily identifying a need. And once he identifies that need, he's got to figure out, how do I respond to that need? How do I respond to the housing needs of people in Houston, Texas? Is it apartment? Or is it condo? Or is it residential individual family lots? He has a program. He has an idea, the developer does. And the developer takes that idea and he creates a program. He then sits down with a design team and he shares that program with them. I want this to be a 4-story office building that has floor plates over 50,000 square feet. I want it to be the best looking project that's in the city. So therefore I don't want it precast painted. I'd like to go with granite on the outside. So you have to give direction to the design team. And the design team in the built environment consists of the architect and all that that entails. It involves engineers and all that entails. And then that design team turns around and produces a set of plans. It may be CAD, it may not be blueprints, but he produces a set of plans so that he can communicate his desire and his design to a contractor. And then a contractor takes that set of plans and he gets with subcontractors and he gets with material supplymen and he executes that. And he delivers a project to the developer. And the developer pays him, and the developer pays the design team. But that is the process by which something gets delivered in the built environment. The built environment is an industry that is multidisciplinary. and collaborative. Now, let's delve into what I mean by that. Let's start with a piece of land. How do you describe that piece of land? Well, I can describe that piece of land as on a meets and bounds survey. But that didn't tell me all there is to know about that land, does it? You know, I'm going to need a soil survey. I'm going to understand and have to understand what kind of soil I have on it. And then that necessarily doesn't describe the piece of property. I need to understand, I need a topo. I need a topographical map of this area. Now I'm ready to start. Well, no. What does zoning say about that piece of property? What does the city say they want to do with that particular piece of property? So you've got to work in defining the area. You could say the city's all in favor of it, but you find out the federal government says it's wetlands. So when you say, you know, you start with a piece of property, that's true. But you've got to define it, and there's very, very different ways to define that property that you've got to pull together. And notice, I talk about zoning. That probably gets into lawyers. And then we talked about the wetlands. Well, that gets into some environmental people. So it's starting to get a little more complicated. And then I'm going to get my design team and architects. Let's think about the different type of architects that you run across here. You have those who are specialized and want to get into landscape. You have those who are more interested in design. You have those who, hey, they better know the code because it's complex and they need just someone to sit down and interpret the code as it applies to that particular geographic area. And then you have interior design. And what do they want? So you have this specialty of different architects. You have lighting architects. Architects who sit down and do nothing but light and plan on the lighting design of a project. And then you get into the engineers. Think about the engineers. How many different engineering colleges are there here on campus? Well, we're going to talk about soils engineering. Now, he's the one that's going to help you understand what your geotechnical survey says and how he's going to carry the weight of the building or the answer to, or the road that you're building. If you're doing a foundation, and you're building in San Francisco, and you're building in the Back Bay or Boston, you're probably building in landfill, and there isn't good soil to sit on. And so you're going to have to design a foundation, and there's engineers that do nothing but get their job designing foundations. There's mechanical engineers, electrical engineers. There's the old structural engineer that you need. And then there's control engineering. All of these different types of specialties that you've got to do and put together as part of being an engineer. And then we, of course, have the general contractor. When I began in the industry, the general contractor usually had a labor crew, he had foremen, he had concrete placers and finishers. Today, the general contractor is nothing more than a construction manager. He has very few people on his payroll that are out there on the job. So he is a construction manager that is managing a large number of subcontractors, material supplymen, and equipment suppliers. Now, when you get down to the bottom there, nothing gets built without money. As I said, what did we say? We can build it, we have a need, we have a design, but how do I know that my need is truly a need that can support itself? Is it a need or a want? Somebody said it. So you are going to have to deal with debate. You're going to have to talk about how you basically finance. You're going to have to be able to communicate with that banker. You say, hey, all I want to do is be a drywall subcontractor. Wait just a second. You're going to need to meet payroll. You're going to need to pay people. You're going to have to deal with that banker to finance those new trucks, fleet of trucks you need. So you're going to be, even if you're a subcontractor, you're going to be involved in this whole cycle, and we'll come back and talk about it. You're going to have to deal with mortgage. The banker gives me money for a short period of time. Now, I go get a mortgage, like you get a mortgage on a house for a longer period of time. And that's a different group of people and financiers that you're going to have to work with. And then, you can only borrow so much. You're going to have some of your own money in the project, whether it's a road project or whatever it is. So you're going to need to have a source of equity, and you're going to have to deal with those type of investors. And then you think you have a need. Then you have to get into the market. Just exactly what that means. You know, there are many, College Station is a great example, where the urban planner sits down and says, we want to have a nice street level retail complex everywhere so that it creates life. And that's what the urban planner wants here in College Station. And the city code goes along with that. But the reality is, not every street needs a retail. So you have to be able to understand whether there's a need and whether, just because that's the requirement. When I'm sitting there budgeting for a project here in College Station, and they tell me I have to have a retailer on the ground floor, I just assume I'm not going to be able to find much of a lease for that and get much rent for it. So that's a cost to the project. Just because it looks good on paper and that's what the city wants, that doesn't necessarily mean it will work. How deep is the demand? How deep is the supply? Should I be building lots for a $1 million home? Or should I be building lots for a $250,000 home? What's the depth of that market? And what are other people doing? And so marketing is very much part of what it is. If you're going to be that drywall subcontractor, and that's your desire, you better understand how many other drywall subcontractors are in that business and what is the demand for that. Because if you're going to size your crews, you want to keep them busy, how much can you do and still keep them busy? So marketing and understanding the market is part of what you are being involved in. And then you will ultimately deal with a broker in some form or fashion. A broker is someone who knows somebody who needs something, and they connect you. It may be a broker who finds you money. It may be a broker who finds you tenants. It may be a broker who finds you land. But you deal with those type of marketing people. And then, accountants. What do you mean accountants? Let me ask you a simple question. What is the language that business is spoken in? Money. Accounting rules. Basic accounting rules. Whether I am here in the United States or whether I am operating in Moscow, I've got to account. And that way I can communicate and understand. And so you're going to have to deal with accountants. Now, does that mean? That means you're probably going to have to know what a debit and a credit is. That means you're going to have to know whether that is an income, a revenue, or an expense. You're going to have to speak their language. And then one of the things that academia has done a wonderful job of is producing lawyers. And you are going to have to deal with lawyers. That's just the vein of our existence here in the United States. Other places, in other parts of the world, it's not quite as bad. So you're going to have to learn some legalese. So I hope that what you're starting to be able to see is that this is a multi-disciplined industry. If you're going to be in the built environment, and you're going to participate in some way in that, you're going to be dealing with professionals outside of what your basic education is in. So you're going to need to be, you have to take that accounting course, take it, attack it, because you will use it. Maybe not on your first job, maybe not on your first project, but eventually you will use it. When they have you take finance, learn it, because while it might not help you estimating that building that your first assignment is doing, or figuring out, the amount of concrete you need for that next day, eventually you will use what you learned in finance as you relate to others. So it is a multidisciplined industry that is collaborative. That's the nature of the built environment. Now, the built environment is one in which communication, leadership, and motivation is necessary. Let's talk about that. We talk about communicating with a lawyer, whether an accountant, or a lawyer, or others. You've got to learn to communicate. You will be writing a letter someday to a CEO. The next day you will be out talking to a laborer. You're going to have to learn to communicate to them differently and how they communicate. And if you do not have the ability to motivate and get others to follow you, that's fine, that may not be a gift. But it says it limits you in the number of tasks and responsibilities you can have. If you can only do what you can do and you can't work with others, you need to find a place where you can do that. But as you grow, you will find out that you're going to have to get other people excited about either your project, your plan, your schedule, your cost, your idea. So you're going to have to communicate that. And then they're going to have to see in you the ability to be motivated, or is he excited about this, or is this something that he's having to do? And why should I follow him if he's not excited? Why should I get that extra man on this job? Because, he's just yelling at me. Should I get him on the job because this guy really is someone I like working with, and I'm going to put an extra person on this crew to make this job go faster to help him meet that schedule? Or, am I going to motivate him through intimidation, or am I going to motivate him because he sees where I'm going and what we're trying to do, and how I'm trying to help him be successful? So that is very much a part of the industry and what we're going to be and what you're going to be doing. Another thing about the built environment that's different is that it's a permanent product. I want you to stop and think about the number of things that you need and you consume that last 50 years. I mean, think about it. How long does a piece of software last? Maybe 2 or 3 years and it's gone, it's out of date. Think about your computer. Seems like they want me to buy one every 4 or 5 years. What about the car I drive? Hey man, I'm driving a clunker. I got it for 7 years. But after 12, it's gone. Think about it. The product that you're building, the industry that you're in, is building something that is going to last a long time. We have buildings that Mr. Hines built in, I can think of Shell Oil in the city of Houston. That building's over 50 years old. We've remodeled it twice, but it's still at Main and Main, and it commands some of the highest rents in the city of Houston. I think about that, and I think about determining the nature of the product I'm going to use. How long is this product going to last? How well is it going to and if I'm a designer, I'm really ought to be concerned about this. How long, when I specify the material, is it meant to last 10 years? Or is it meant to last a year and it doesn't matter if it doesn't look good after a year? So you're dealing with a product that takes a long time. And the developer has to make it clear to you what he's anticipating and how long this project is meant to be and to last. Now, there's a downside with building for the long term. I don't know how many of y'all have been in New York City, but you can go north and south in Manhattan pretty well. They built some nice roads going north and south, but somehow they didn't think about going east to west. And they laid that out over 200 years ago. And if you drive New York City, you get frustrated by that mistake. So what we're doing is creating something that future generations can look at and see, did they do a good job or not? Did they leave the environment better than when they came? Is what they're doing worthwhile? And we'll be judged by that in the built environment. The next thing you need to think about is the fact that what you're building is probably, it is a custom product. Now what I mean by that, I build McDonald's, one McDonald's looks like the next model McDonald's. Well, that's not true. Just think what we said about the soils. The soils may need to be different. How we come in with utilities may be different. So while it may be the same, similar, it is not the same. It is a custom product. And if you start thinking about major apartment complexes or office buildings, they're custom. They're building it once. Now think about the auto industry. They sit there and they design something 2 or 3 years. Then they create a model. And then they take it and they build it. And then they test drive it. And then after they work out all the bugs, they put it in production and they sell it to you, and then you get a recall notice. You do not have the ability to get a recall notice on the product that you're delivering. You have to do it right the first time. And variety. We've talked about the built environment being a golf course or being the Galleria Mall. It is a world of different things out there. And that also keeps, and then if that doesn't keep you excited enough, then let's look at local versus global. Let's deal with the urban planner at College Station, and let's deal with the urban planner in Moscow. Just that difference ought to be exciting for you. And if you can't get excited about it, if you can't get excited about building something that is leaving this place better than you found it, if you don't like really stopping and thinking about all the details and the way it's all going to come together, if you don't like variety and you want to stay in Muleshoe, Texas, don't get in the built environment industry. You've got to be excited about what we're doing. The process of designing, construction, and financing and servicing different type of properties is something that you ought to be able to get excited about. And if you're not, that's okay. Go be a software computer. You know, one of the things that is very key and critical in this business is that you've got to finally, after deciding what you want to do, and where the developer has to come in someplace, is sometimes look at, is what I'm doing leaving this world is a better place. We were put on this earth, we were told to work. We had it pretty easy for a while, and then we screwed up, and now we have to work where it's hard. But we all have a desire to leave this place a better place. And if you don't, like I say, question. Real estate not only meets the needs, but it's also got to work economically. And that is part of what the developer has to test and check on. Does the project produce enough return on the investment to be economically viable? That is the question. And just quickly, we sit down, we talk about site, we talked about land, we talked about the architectural team, we talked about the contractor, we talked about the tenants and what they're going to use that space for. We talked about, well, we always got the government we got to pay taxes to. We have the banker, we have the brokers that we're going to have to market it. And we have one of the big items I left out of that, but I have it under sales cost, is the lawyers. And then G&A. I got to pay myself because I'm building this project, waiting for me to cash out and get some money. So I'm going to have overhead. And then, regardless of how well I plan, things happen. And so I got to have a contingency. So I sit down and look at a project cost, 100%. And these percentages that I show here are about the percentages of a total cost of project. So construction is about 50% of the cost. There's another 50% of the cost that you may or may not be studying or seeing in your present studies. Now, there's two ways I can look at it. I can look at what is the return on the cash, the cost of the project. And I sit down and say, I can lease this, and I can get about $16 million worth of revenue, but then I have to clean that building. I got to have a security. Every once in a while, I've got to pay the landscaper. I got to pay utilities, taxes. And so I net $11 million out of this investment. So I take the number, the money that I'm going to net out of that investment, and I divide it by my cost. And I sit there and say, I'm making a 9.9% return on my money. I don't know when the last time is you put money in the savings account. No one's paying 9.9. Stock barely meets that after a long year average. So it's a pretty good return. That makes sense. So I have a need. I have something I'm proud to be doing and leaving this place better. And I have an economic return. Now, another way that I can look at it is I can take that same return and $11 million worth of return, and I can sit there and I can sell it. And when I sell it, I take the cash flow and I divide it by the cap rate. And what I mean by the cap rate, that is about, you want to make 8.5% on your money. So you can buy this from me if you want to make 8.5% on your money for $131 million. And so I can take my cost of 112, subtract it from 131, and sit there and make $19 million worth of profit for my effort. So it passes basically the economic test. I've identified a need. I kind of have an idea. I have an idea what it's going to cost. I put together my budgets. And I say, okay, let's proceed with this investment. And then that's when the real work begins. The project meets a need, it's economically viable, and then we begin a detailed process of planning and working with the architects, engineers, the contractors, the bankers, the lawyers, the accountants. We do that, create, and be a part of the built environment. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me. I would open it to questions if you have any. Yes, sir.
Mentioning the show building in Houston.
Yes, sir.
Earlier when you had the big triangle.
Yes, sir.
So would you guys at all, like whenever y'all built that building, was it specifically
Yes, we do both. In that particular case, think back, that was back in the early 60s or mid 60s. Mr. Hines was just starting out, and he didn't have a whole lot of capital. So he had this site and he had leased. He had the idea that he could find a tenant and shell off. Decided that they would relocate out of New York City. And he convinced them that he could build them the first-class office building that they deserved in Houston, Texas. And the tallest building he had built, that was a 50-story building, the tallest building he had built was a 6-story building. He was a great salesman. So marketing comes into it. But we landed Shell Oil as a tenant. We got busy and designed it. And fortunately, halfway through the project, they decided that they didn't take enough space. And so we built Shell 2, a little small building next door. In some cases, like Salesforce Tower that I was showing you in San Francisco, it was really Trans-Bay Tower. And we did that without a single tenant. That was it's 1,200,000 square foot building. Cost was closer to, it's about $1.1 billion building. We started that without a tenant. Different time, different risk. But now Salesforce has taken half of the building. And they're in the city of San Francisco. Are we out of the woods with the risk and with have it, half of it at least? No. We still have a ways to go. Hope the economy holds up in the tech world for another 2 or 3 years while we deliver. Yes, sir.
You mentioned that you identified the need in San Francisco and you create a project. So I believe there's a relation between you taking the risk and still identifying the need and meeting it. So how did you balance it out that you want to take that risk and you believe that yes, there is that kind of need, even though you didn't have a tenant in the first place?
What we saw was a great location. The city had all its transportation coming into the city, the bus traffic, the BART, as well as the California rail system that serves as the peninsula. We saw young people like yourself wanting to live in the cities and not in the suburbs. They were all coming to this one location. The city needed to pay for that. And the way they were going to pay for this transportation center was sell the air rights to someone. And we felt with that being the ability to build the tallest building in San Francisco, where there's a lot of venture capital, where there's a lot of lawyers, where there's a lot of companies that make their headquarters, and the desirability of San Francisco, we felt that we could do it. Did we take a large bet? Yes. And we spent a year looking for financing, and we had almost given up. We had spent around $30 million just perfecting the rights that we were working on. And it was a tough time. And we found Boston Properties, Sanzale, and Jerry, Marty Zuckerman and Jerry Hines sit down and saw the same thing and said, if we build it, they will come. So yes, there is that part of it. There is that is part of the judgment that you have to make and take. Not all projects we can pencil out. We're taking some risks. We're thinking that and to do that means I've got to talk to a lot of people. I've got to talk to an architect who may believe that I'm serious about building this building. I've got to talk and communicate and lead and get excited. The bank who's willing to give me the short-term money. I've got to motivate and get excited about and get an equity source excited about in the case of Salesforce Boston Properties. And then I've got to go out and start the work. That takes leadership. That's part of what you've got to believe in what you're doing. You've got to believe that what you're doing is going to meet a need and is the right thing. Because if you don't believe it, you're surely not going to convince somebody else. You're not going to be able to communicate to them your passion. Thank you for that question. Do we have Ben, are you okay? Yes, sir.
Given your time in the industry, what trends stand out? What's changed during that time, and what are some future trends you foresee?
It is, there have been, in my career, and I talk about it, the way we finance projects. When I first went to HINES in the early 70s, when there was the ability, you could go to a life company, get a 30-year loan, go to the bank. Then the 80s came along, and you could go to a savings and loan, and you could borrow all of your project costs, or you could go find an equity source. Different way of financing, because the life company said the inflation is too much, and I'm not going to give you a mortgage. Then we went along where they all got burned in the 90s when commercial real estate overbuilt. And so you had to go to Wall Street and go to the fund to get your money. In the 2000s, we saw that the pension fund industry of a defined benefit programs were legal. It was all 401 money, IRA money, and so therefore we have a public REIT so that Mrs. McGillicuddy can invest her $10,000 in commercial real estate for her retirement. So financing is just one area. You look at every area. There was a time when academia hadn't produced too many lawyers, and you used to be able to work more on handshakes. Now that's all that counts anyway. So don't think I got a lawyer to protect me. If you're not going to do what's right, it doesn't matter what the contract says, because you don't have enough time to make me do what's right. Because I can get the lawyer to delay and delay and delay you, and you will lose money. Even though you may be right. So deal with people that are people of integrity and of the word. Flee from those who don't. There's no contract to make them perform. Only your leadership and motivation. That motivation involves money. We all go to work working for money. That's one example. Just the product. Think about the product. You millenniums coming through the cycle are changing what us baby boomers wanted. In the way, when I got out of here, I went to Houston, went to Three Fountains. And I thought the greatest amenity of my apartment was it had a pool. If it doesn't have a gym, if it doesn't have a media center, if it doesn't have a pool hall, if it doesn't have barbecue pits, y'all won't even lease an apartment there anymore. And so the needs and what people expect, generational changes have occurred. And then, probably not necessarily always the best thing, we tend to create more regulations and more regulations. And so those things, that really takes a lot. It takes a lot of effort just to keep up with those changes. Are there, Ben, I think, or how are we doing on time? Or
we're just out of time, so thank you for coming. I'm sure he'll hang out and answer questions individually if y'all have more you'd like to talk to him. And we thank you